Hey guys, what's cracking? Godsman here, coming at you with another episode of Custom Card Review. I'm not even gonna try and count how many we're at. I think it's like 12 or 13 or something. I think I actually made an oopsie in the last episode by calling it 11 when it was 12. But regardless of which one this is, we're quite into the thick of things here, and we're starting with Witiful Hedgehog's cars. Witiful is actually kind of an interesting poster here because he also tends to post a lot of suggestions to other custom card posters in this thread, right? So he's kind of interesting in that he's sort of like another reviewer within Reddit itself. So let's see if when watching the Watchers, if he's got some good cards to offer us. For this time around, I was originally going to post the newest version of two decks I posted back in December, but due to that soft limit, plans had to change. I'll link the original versions at the end of this in case someone's curious what they're like, but otherwise, no need to pay attention that much, mind. There's kind of a jumble of words there. Anyway, I get what he's saying. The two I have here are a Dark States and a Dragon Empire deck, respectively. The italicis here is a little bit odd because I think there's like a occasional word like this "duh" that's like not even italicized. I wonder if that was just skipped over for some random reason. Maybe it was an accident. Grade 1s will have boost, grade 3s will have twin drive, persona ride, etc. Okay, so basic stat stuff. These are both decks with AT forms not that I have space for those. I wish I had some arts to go along with these, but oh well. First up is Agrios, or in my notes, Hungry Ogre Blast. This is the Dark States deck. He's an ogre that's cursed with the need to eat and failure to do so, may not be your liking. This is very much like Greed On, but like an even darker interpretation of Greed On, where he eats not because that's his nature, but because he will actually die if he doesn't. So you can actually create a sort of a tragic figure in that he has to do this very heinous carnal act out of necessity, but then he has to make the choice between sacrificing his life or sacrificing his morals. But you know, that's just neither here nor there here, it sounds like. That's it's represented as a soul okay, failure to do so may not be to your liking. I assume that he just means like death, right? It's represented as a soul blast requirement that increases turn after turn. Ooh, I do like that. The curse though is not all doom and gloom, as it doesn't kick in until one comes of age, grade 3 or greater, and fulfilling it grants the cursed one a small boon, leading those of Agrios' lineage who are shouldering the curse to be highly productive. That's a fascinating idea. I do like that. So essentially, when you become an adult, the curse is put on you, and if you choose to go with the curse, it provides you some powers, right? Which is kind of interesting because it's sort of like I keep bringing up D&D. If you guys haven't realized, I'm on a D&D kick these days, right? It's reminding me a bit of a warlock, right? Where a warlock makes a deal with the patron, right? Let's say like a devil or something, the classic deal with the devil, but it could also be something like Cthulhu. It could be a fairy queen, something like that. You get powers bestowed upon you from them, but in exchange, you're sort of like their servant, right? And they can get increasingly more demanding as time goes on, but in exchange, you also get more powers. They betroth more riches and more neato techniques and powerful abilities onto you, right? So it's kind of like that. It's like if you had a pseudo warlock deck. That's cool. I'm also thinking of something like if you guys have ever seen Roku from Inuyasha, right? He has the wind tunnel, and he actually had the option to use the wind tunnel more and make it more potent, but it would also drain his lifespan a little bit more, right? So it's like, what are you willing to do for power? Born to one day starve Agrios. It's so sad, but at the same time, it's very accurate. This is a very, very theme-rich deck. I'm really interested now because of just how much story there seems to be to this guy. The 15th in line set to inherit the family curse remains optimistic, albeit peckish. When wrote upon, if you went second, draw a card. Okay, cool. I like that it says the 15th in line, so you actually do get like a direct lore confirmation of how long this has been going on. Well, I guess kind of, right? Because for all we know, a person might have died and succumbed to this curse rather early. I'm surprised no one ever decided to not like sire children at all, right? Like if you want to go against the curse, imagine if you were a dude who went against the curse, but then like had a kid, knowing that, you getting it because you were a disciple, or rather a descendant of like your father, right, and got their curse. That's kind of effed up, dude. It's like, I'm gonna bring you into this world, but now you're gonna suffer the thing that I literally killing myself to not suffer from. Wow. Staunch in the face of famine, Agrios. Wow, he's got a lot of really good vocabulary. Snacking along the way to the promised day. When this unit rides from Born to Starve Agrios, draw a card and get an all-consuming crest. Oh, okay, so this reads like a strike deck set kind of thing, right? You know, you get the crest and the draw on the grade 1 ride, but obviously I don't think this guy's gonna stride, right? But, you know, maybe we shouldn't say obviously, right? For all we know, right? He might just do that and, you know, say, G units be damned. All-consuming curse crest, right? This is the time to look at that, so I'm glad that he put it here so that we can immediately contextualize or read along. At the beginning of your main phase, increase your hunger by 1. Your hunger starts at 0 and is increased by this crest and your card effects. Fascinating. What's key about this timing is because you get the crest on the ride phase, you're going to immediately get your first hunger marker on turn 1 no matter what turn it is. So that's important to know. Auto at the beginning of your battle phase, if your grade 3 or greater Vanguard did not Soul Blast this turn, your Vanguard gets minus 5,000 power and minus drive 1, or minus 1 drive until your next turn. If your hunger is 6 or more, it's minus 10,000 power and minus 2 drive instead. This is like Dungaree, right? Particularly V-Series Dungaree. V-Series Dungaree had a self-bind gimmick where you kept on binding cards from your own deck, rearguard's hand, what have you, right? And whenever Dungaree attacked, you had to throw all the cards in your bind zone into the drop zone. But if you weren't able to get to at least 3 binds dropped, he would lose some of his stats. Now, what's different about Dungaree from what I'm assuming Agrios is going to be like is that Dungaree actually had higher base stats than most Vanguards. His base stats were 17k base power, 2 critical and triple drive. That was just as a grade 3 basic unit, right? But by negging those stats, you effectively weakened him, right? This one seems like it's even more severe because if you don't abide by the hunger, if you don't Soul Blast, especially at hunger count 6, you're not going to get drive checks. That's wild. I've really gotten into the swing of using crest as an excuse for medical conditions as curses. It's great. I wonder what the thematic underpinning for that is, right? Like, why medical conditions are curses? Is this just an idea that because the crest is ever looming and it's sort of like an out-of-bounds zone that you can't interact with it just in a way that you can't really interact with your own diseases and curses? I guess I can understand that if the affliction is beyond your reach and comprehension, then a crest might signify that in a way. Crafty Dipper, Agrios. This is the grade 2 ride line. Despite the looming threat of a curse on the horizon, he can never quite resist swiping a cookie. Ooh, it is in his nature to consume, whether he abides by the curse or not. Auto, when this unit rides from grade 1 with Agrios in its card name, you Soul Charge 2. Okay. This is, of course, going to help with your Soul Blasting quite a lot. Auto on the Vanguard circle, when this unit attacks the Vanguard, if you have an all-consuming crest, costs Soul Blast equal to your hunger. Energy Charge 1, and this unit gets power plus 5,000 until end of turn, and you may draw a card. Fascinating. So, what's interesting about this effect is because you get a Soul Charge 2 and your hunger is going to be at 2 because you're a grade 2, you know, all these 2s running around, right? You're going to Soul Charge 2 and then Soul Blast them. Or if you want particular cards in the Soul, you just Soul Blast the previous in the ride line because you do have the 0 and the 1, right? So that's a little bit trippy. That means that this card does also plus you 1 and it energy charges and it gets 5k when it attacks until end of turn. That's a little bit much. Like, yes, most ride lines in the modern day do plus you 2, but this is also getting you energy and an extra 5,000 power on top of that. That's kind of wild. I don't think it's necessarily the worst thing in the world though in terms of balancing, because nothing here is too terribly strong, but it does keep up with the modern power creep to where someone would look at this ride line and say this is an insanely strong ride line, one of the best out there. The only thing holding back this ride line, of course, is that it's not generic, right? And what's also cool about this ride line is you could say, well, you could just ride this, you could just use Agrios rides, right? but your crest is preventing you from doing it because you can only ride Agrios, which means you can't get to your grade 3 if it isn't Agrios. And even if you could, this is just generically saying you're grade 3 or greater Vanguard, not soul blasting. So you would have that additional hunger restriction, which is, hunger is ironically generic as a condition, even though the crest only puts it on Agrios. The crest is the thing. It is the curse that's dictating that only Agrios have to suffer from this. So yeah, even within the mechanics so far, it feels like it's syncing up perfectly with his lore here. So far, a 10 out of 10 deck. The one who perseveres, Agrios. Ooh, that's kind of a heroic sounding name for him. Endure the hardships until the moment to overcome it can be grasped. Ah, so he might actually abide by the curse until you can break it. Act on the Vanguard circle once per turn. If you have an all-consuming curse crest, cost counterblast 1. Choose a card from your soul and put it into your hand. Increase your hunger by 1. Ooh, you sure you want to do that, buddy? What's so risque about that. I love what he did with this effect because it's actually it's like you're burning the candle on both ends. Not only does increasing your hunger by 1 kill your soul, but you're taking a card from soul into the hand, which means you're effectively counterblasting and soul blasting to plus. Which is, yeah, if you're putting up your soul tax by 1 and lowering the soul that you have to pay the tax by 1, that's like overall a 2. That's a cool effect. He's really, he is doubling down, if not tripling down, on the gimmick he's set for. This is an amazing ride line. Act on the Vanguard circle once per turn. Alright, we got a lot of act skills. Cost Soul Blast equal to your hunger, which if you use this other act skill, then your hunger should be at 3 at this point. Or 4 if you actually did, yeah, sorry, let me rephrase. You can use this axe skill, and then you could increase your hunger to 4, meaning you only need 3, or you could do this first and increase your hunger to 4. Now, regardless, let's say you do Soul Blast equal to your hunger. For every 2 cards Soul Blasted for this cost, energy charge 1, and this unit gets 5,000 power in a turn. So you have even more emphasis on energy charging, which is interesting because I guess I can understand why you're doing it in retrospect, because your soul is going to be completely dedicated to Agrios at this point, that anything that's all about soul in your deck, you know, it's kind of called for. So you'll want to use your energy and your counterblast instead as your primary principal resources. Okay, I can understand that. Now, divine skill. Ooh. Before I read that though, one thing to mention is because it says for every 2 you energy charge and get 5,000 power, he very cleverly put it in increments of 2 because it does incentivize you even more to, you know, no greed on puns intended here, get greedy and increase your hunger by 1 with this first act skill. So it gives you the option to not only plus, but it gives you the option to get an extra energy charge and 5,000 power because your hunger will be 4 by the time you proc this secondary act skill. Really cool card design there. It gives your players meaningful decision trees, which is always a plus when it comes to card design. Divine skill, act Vanguard. Everything this guy does is an act skill. That's it's been a while since I've seen a card actually do something like that, right? I know there's other cards that only have act skills, but there's one really prominent one in my mind that I'm forgetting. But rather than waste time thinking about it, let's just move on, and maybe one of you guys can tell me what I'm thinking about. If your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, yosh, cost Soul Blast 1, still dangerous. For every 2 of your hunger, choose a card from your drop, put it into your soul, and if your hunger is 8 or more, this unit gets, okay, so what's funny about this is you only would do this if your hunger is 8 or more, because otherwise all you're doing is just swapping out soul a little bit, which I guess technically is kind of nice because this is also an axe skill. So what you do is you swap out soul, and then you use this effect to take the card that you swapped out, thus meaning that by transitive property, any card in your drop can then be added to your hand by a comboing of these two, the first and the third axe skill. That's interesting. And if your hunger is 8 or more, this unit gets until end of turn, continuous on the Vanguard circle. During the battle your unit attacks, when your opponent would call guards to Guardian Circle, they must call 3 or more at the same time. This is a very, very powerful skill. A triple battle door says during the battle your unit attacks. I'm assuming that means all of your units. And if that's the case, that's pretty wild. Now, I'm not seeing any multi-attack here, and Agrios here doesn't enable multi-attack in any extent. So any multi-attack would have to come from the rear guards, but in light of that not being the case, then I think that would be perfectly fine, right? Like, yeah, if your attacks are pretty big and they're demanding a lot of cards in hand, I mean, it's kind of like how other divine skills do it, right? Divine skills that are more offense-based, like let's say Blamed Mire or Varg or Dragris, they're going to demand extra cards anyway if you're pushing for game. So this is also demanding extra cards, but it's doing it by like taxation, right? It's saying if you're going to guard me at all, you're going to have to use 3 of them things, buddy. Which I don't know why I used the South Park Canadian accent there, buddy, guy, but ignore me, right? This is a fine skill. I also like that since the hunger is 8 or more, this is another instance of, if you want to ramp your hunger, you do have a really, really strong incentive to do so. But when you activate your hunger, you get up to 8. Oh, bro. You need to Soul Blast equal to your hunger to do crap, dude. Like, hell. Oh, wait, hold on a second. I guess one thing that you can do is, if you don't do this effect, right? Let's say that you just did this, which is Counter Blast, you increase your hunger, and then you use the Soul Blast. Right, okay. So, the hunger only activates if you didn't Soul Blast at all. It doesn't say that you have to Soul Blast equal to your hunger. The only thing that says that so far is this ride line and then this axe scope Agrios, right? So now, okay, now I understand why this Soul Blast is here. This Soul Blast is also meaning that you don't have to actually suffer the downsides of your hunger, because it would be really annoying if you had to Soul Blast 8 in order to actually have this skill live without suffering the dramatic downsides of minus 10,000 power and no drives to your Vanguard. This guy doesn't get any drives at all, so that minus 2 drive means it ain't doing drive checks, buddy. That's quite wild. Okay, this cost makes more sense to me. This is the one thing I was a little weirded out by, and even that actually has proper justification for it. Still 10 out of 10 so far. Very impressed. No, I thought I'd try a divine skill here, but I might cut it in favor of bolstering the first 2 abilities in the final version. If you haven't noticed already, the divine skill Soul Blast can be used to place the Hunger Blast if necessary. I just barely noticed that, but I did notice it, dude. Don't you worry. I am a professional. You know, I say that as I'm still very sloppily checking my recording in the middle of the video to make sure it's still recording. Wow. I'm sorry, guys. I'm a lost cause. Okay. Doom Beef Salisbury. So you've theme. Wait, hold on a second. Darfodal Stellana. Okay, that's nothing. Grinding Demon Shottle. Okay, for a second there, I thought this was all of your stuff was going to be food based, kind of like how Dragon Ball characters are named after food. You know, like Piccolo, Broly for broccoli, stuff like that. Okay. To sustain Agrios family long term, there's still some weird grammar issues, but they're minor. A particularly resilient livestock is needed. So this is probably your bread and butter grade 2 rare. Auto. When this unit is placed on rear circle, if you have a Vanguard with Agrios in its card name, you counterblast 1. Search your drop and deck for up to 1 Doom Beef Salisbury each. Put them in your soul and shuffle your deck. This is Witching Hour flashbacks right here, right? If you guys don't know, the Witching Hour series were a series of old school Dark Irregular cards which got more power on the rear for each copy of them that you had in the soul. And even in more modern design spaces of Dark Regular, right, you see instances of cards getting effects when you have more copies of them in the soul, right, i.e. Ironheart Assassin or Variance Killer Tail. This is a little bit of the opposite, where instead of getting effects, well, actually, hold on a second, let me read on first, because I get the ceiling now. Auto on the rear once per turn. When this unit attacks a Vanguard, this unit gets 5,000 power, 5,000 shield until end of your opponent's turn. Opponent's next turn. For each Doomsbury Salisbury, you soul blasted for your Vanguard's ability this turn. If you soul blasted 3 or more, this unit gets critical +1 until end of turn. Aha! Right. So, as I was saying, because I had a suspicion as I was talking about it, right? The way it would work is you would empower them by having more in the soul. This guy is like that, but it's actually getting more of its copies in there, albeit you have to counterblast to do it, which none of those other cards required you to counterblast to get copies of themselves in there, because they don't even do that. They rely on other skills to get that, and then all of their effects are just gravy at that point. They're fully on online. This one actually does do a lot of the legwork, but it only gets the legwork for 2 Doomsbury, Doom Beef Salisbury, right? Which means you have to get a third one in there of your own volition. But if you do, he gets a critical, but even if not, he's a pretty good attacker and interceptor. I got a text. Is this important? No, that is not important. All right, carrying on. I love this design philosophy as well, right? You have to throw in the extra mile in order to get your Doom Beefs going. Now, what's also interesting about the Doom Beefs is you don't stockpile them indefinitely and then keep gaining this skill. It's only for each Doom Beef that you soul blasted this turn, right? So what you can do, you have more divergent decision trees here. Loving that, right? Decision tree 1 is you get 2 Doom Beefs there, right? And then you throw them both in the soul, you soul blast them with the axe skill of Agrios, and then this guy is going to be able to get power and shield when he attacks, right? But what you can also do is you can put in a couple Doom's Beefs, and then you only soul blast 1 Doom's Beef. And that is what you do with the soul blasted one is that you take it along with another Doom Beef from the deck and put them in the soul, meaning that the one from the deck from the previous turn and now both the one from the deck and the one you soul blasted from the drop back into the soul, that's 3 Doom Beef total. I'm sorry if I'm confusing you guys. Essentially, if you don't soul blast both and you leave 1 and then you put in 2 next turn, 1 plus 2 is 3, and then that's the 3 that you can soul blast for the bigger push here, which is probably what you do for the divine skill turn, right? You divine skill this. Now, of course, what's a little bit problematic about it is that divine skill is already giving you the 1 soul blast, meaning that Doom's Beef isn't going to proc any skills off of it because you need to soul blast multiples of it. So that's another balancing aspect where you actually can abide by the hunger anyway, and if you do get the hunger, then this guy's going to get more energy, more power, and your Doom's Beasts are going to be having more power and critical to all substantiate the threat of this triple battle door. Lots of potential options here, right? The concept is very straightforward and it's something that you can easily remember, but at the same time you can complicate it in a meaningful direction where Agrios is really a deck that you can take any way you want, right? You can interpret the hunger mechanics, the idea of soul blasting, and when this divine skill should be activated in any amount of ways. This might, if he keeps up this tempo, this might dead ass be the best ride line I've read in this season so far. This is absolutely blowing my mind away right now. Like, holy crap, the card quality of this design. Direful Doll Stellana. I hope this doesn't help Direful Dolls generically because that deck is already cracked as it is. Let's leave it alone. Act on the rear, cost Energy Blast 2, and put this unit to your soul. Okay, so we're finally in use for our energy, which I like. Choose up to 1 card from your soul, and it gets until end of turn. When this card is soul blasted by the ability of your Vanguard with Agrios in its card name, you may call this card to rear as rest, and it gets power plus 5,000 in a turn. If your Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, call it as stand instead. Oh, interesting. So Stellana being a generic grade 1 rear guard means that you can actually proc this Energy Blast while you're in grade 2, and then Agrios Axe skill will be able to soul blast it because you have the soul blast equal to your hunger of 2, and then you energy charge to pay back Stellana. So Stellana is kind of an interesting cycle card because you're initially energy blasting and negging one, but then you're calling out the card and it's going to get plus 5,000 power. So what that means is it's a break even, but that break even for the price of Energy Blast 2, that Energy Blast 2 is going to earn you 2 skills. It's going to earn you the ability to call anything from your soul, meaning that you have even more board building capacities. It's kind of like old school Fenrir, right? Where old school Fenrir's stride skill allowed you to counterblast one to call a unit that was soul blasted back over the rear. That, in tandem with the plus 5,000 power, is what the Energy Blast 2 provides you, which I think is perfectly fine because it's not major benefits, but it's just enough benefits that you would really use this as a cycle card that helps grease the oil, right? It's not a crucial piece, it's a piece that helps you get your crucial pieces. And it adds even more versatility because the soul is now just not a bulwark, right, that you use as a cost to feed Agrios. It's also a genuine toolbox. You can toolbox lots of things. The existence of Stellana on top of Agrios's first skill, those two things together gives you enough ways of manipulating your soul that you could actually consider a few different tech options and use the generic dark states to pull to your example. Like for instance, clean sweep. Clean sweep would be a fantastic option that doesn't just remove your opponent's cards because you don't have any removal in this deck so far, but it could also actually put some of your rear guards into the soul if you need a desperate play to feed Agrios some more cards, right? Very, very, very impeccable, perfect card design. Grinding Demon Schulte, or Shodel, Kodal? Shodel? Not sure. Turtle. Grade 1. Okay, so this is another grade 1 rare. Come on and get some fresh sausage made. Fervent kill. Okay. It's a pig. Okay. Mind in the gutter. Anyway, auto on the rear. At the end of the battle, this unit boosted. At the end of the battle that this unit boosted, if you have a Vanguard with Agrios at its card name cost, put another rear guard in the same column as this unit into your soul. Draw a card, and one of your units get power plus 5,000 until end of turn. And if your hunger increased by 2 or more this turn, you may countercharge one. Ooh. Okay. So the prize. So you're breaking even. You're going to give a little bit of power, and then you could get a counter charge, right? This counter charge only applies though if you increased your hunger by 2 or more, which means 1 is going to come from your crest itself, but you also increase your hunger from using this skill. Now, one thing I will say about like this is you because it's drawing a card to replace, and then you're also getting power, and then you're getting counter charge. The benefits here, like this is a really, really wild countercharger. I feel like one thing that you could have done is also like if your hunger increased by 2 or more this turn and you did not countercharge this turn, you may countercharge 1. I feel like that's the only thing I would do, because then the counterblast becomes ridiculously easy, and putting something into the soul isn't exactly the biggest cost in the world, because you can then cycle them out from the soul when soul blasted to the field, or from the soul to the hand if you're using Agrios' main skill, which this effectively made free. Yeah, that's the one thing. I feel like it's a little bit too much value that makes the first skill too easy, but you could easily tweak it, right? Like, I think it would be cool if you actually didn't draw a card here, right? Or you could say draw a card. Okay, how about this? Cost, put another rear guard in the same column as the unit into the soul, and you may draw a card. If you did not, choose one of your units to get 5,000 power into end of turn, and if your hunger increased by 2 or more, you may countercharge 1. Meaning that if you can't get the countercharges multiple times, but then you're also, by doing that, you're technically taking a neg to the soul, which is a meaningful place to put it, so it's not that bad of a neg. It's probably the best neg that you could ask for, but it's still something to counterbalance the use of this. And if you choose to do the draw, then yeah, you can just convert from field into hand, and a lot of Divines decks do that already, so I don't care if you do that multiple times. I mean, heck, just look at things like Reziel, Vargatragras, yada yada. I say this a lot. So yeah, that's the one thing I would say is don't have all of this be in the effect. Choose between this and then this, right? And then you're good to go. Okay. We got one more card, it looks like. Spectral Maid Kuroya is another grade 1 rare. Wow. If I'm not mistaken, yeah, you only have this is only a Vanguard circle, so you won't even run more of your ride line in the main deck. Okay, yeah, you only have one dedicated main deck grade 2 to this card, which is fascinating to me, especially because Doom Beef is mostly good when you have like 3 of it in the soul, so you'd only have 1 of it on the rear guard circle. That's an interesting decision. Spectral Maid Kuroya is a grade 1 rare with the following skills. Auto, when this card is soul blasted by the ability of your Vanguard with Agrios in its card name, you have 1 or less rear guards of Kuroya in their card names, you may call this card to rear circle. And this unit gets power plus 2,000 until end of turn for each of your hunger. If your hunger is 3, this unit gets plus 6,000 power. Okay, a little bit of reminder text so that you know what to look at. Very perfect effect. Although one thing I will admit is this is a very, very wild plussing thing. You're already getting a lot of value from your soul anyway, so I feel like it wouldn't be bad if you put a different condition behind this, right? Like for instance, you could have this be a counterblast, especially because it's going to be a pretty hefty booster, so it's a pretty nice plus anyway, which means it could be good for a counterblast. I could also see an argument where Kuroya would discard a card and call it, but maybe what you could do is that you call it by the ability, and then what you do is it says then for each other rear guard with Kodo and their card name on your field, you discard one, meaning that the first one is free. But if you're doing them subsequent times, right, to more rear guard circles, you have to pay discards. But if you guys remember Brave Lancer Dragon from the G era in G Next format, Brave Lancer Dragon had that idea where discard wasn't a cost, but it's a stipulation of the effect that you do after you get the benefit. And I want that to be the same way here, because what it means then is that if you've emptied your hand, then yes, you can call these Cododias scot-free, and I think that's perfectly fine because it means you're going all in, and it's like your big desperation play, which I think is cool for this deck because you're already facing a cumbersome mechanic with hunger potentially, so it's nice to have something like that in your corner if you really need to go there, right? So you could stockpile Cododias for that really big push at the very big end game, but still, it's nice to have the danger of that discard if you're trying to get multiple copies out there, because otherwise it's a little bit meh. Like, don't get me wrong, the one or less doesn't mean that you can only have 2 of them out there, but still, even just getting 2 for free is kind of crazy when you think about it, right? So, especially because, again, they're really big boosters as the time goes on. Auto on the rear. When this unit boosts a grade 3 or greater Vanguard with Agrios in its card name, if your hunger is 4 or greater, again, another incentive to use Agrios' main phase skill, which admittedly is not even really that big of a deal now because you do have Chodol, which is making it easier for you. Again, right, trying to make a difference between these effects. If your hunger is 4 or greater, you Energy Blast 3, and your Vanguard gets critical +1 for that battle. At the end of that battle, put this unit into Soul. Okay. Something about this, right? Like, even more, because this card is putting it back into the Soul, which you can then Soul Blast it out to make it free. That means that your Vanguard is always going to have a critical for its attacks. And now, of course, that is only for when this thing boosts, right? And what's interesting about this is because it's at the end of the battle, it puts it into the Soul, your Vanguard's still going to benefit from the big booster. I feel like this effect, this part of putting it into the Soul, I don't know if I like that because of how easy this skill is, right? Like, you see what I'm going at with this. It's basically an infinitely loopable way of getting critical and power to your Vanguard for just energy, and the total cost of it is Energy Blast 3. But you get 3 energy every turn by the crest, plus you're getting even more energy from the effect of your Vanguard right here, right? So I feel like that's another one where you're getting a little bit too much ease of use from it, but you're on the right track. I think a couple more tweaks make this card a little bit harder and make this card have you choose between the draw and the other stuff, and then that's it. I think that's the only thing I could say about that. And that was Agrios. Unfortunately, I had to cut some of his support options to fit the other deck, but it is what it is. So I guess that must mean that you did have like other grade 2s, maybe a rear guard grade 3 plan, but because of the limits, that's you had to go for it. Whoa, holy crap, he actually has a lot going on here. Okay, that's wild. Okay, so this right here, I'm gonna say this now. There were a couple of balancing issues with Chodol and Kudodia, right? I'm going to fully admit that. And at the same time, I also do believe that this could have changed based on what other support that he had. But in light of these facts, I'm going to award this a 10 out of 10. There is just too much raw goodness, brilliance here. It's a masterstroke in card design, taking this gimmick, which is genuinely interesting and not really approached before, right? We have seen traces of it with things like Dungaree, right? And I think there was another Vanguard that also had like a Soul Blast associated with it for its costs. But this really dives headfirst into the idea of that, and also calls into question the use of crests in a meaningful way in order to set negative conditions onto you, which can then be positive conditions depending on how you do it. And this is one of the most brilliant aspects of this deck, is that the thematic battle and the actual game design of the deck are one and the same. right? You as the player, just like Agrios, who is your Vanguard, you're adopting the struggle of your Vanguard, and you as the player have to make the choice of whether to feed into the hunger or to play against the hunger. And you can do it both ways. Are you someone who's greedy and just wants all the power, even at the cost of potentially killing yourself in the end? Or are you a person who wants to stave off the hunger as much as possible and use a lot of the resource management aspect of this deck in order to get around with it? It reminds me of Infamous. In Infamous, Cole McGrath particularly, right? I mean, Delson, he had his whole thing going on, but let's go with Cole, right? He was the main headliner of the first two Infamous game. You could go for good versus evil, and particularly with the first Infamous, it was presented as you can sacrifice a lot of lives for a really big plot point, right? Which, with the Ray Sphere, which I'm not going to spoil, but it's a really old game, so I guess there's no point in not spoiling at this point. But you could make a lot of sacrifices, but you would get a lot more powerful, right? But people would also hate you, and your power would start to consume you. On the other hand, you could be a good guy, but you're not as powerful as your bad guy. In the game, the evil Cole is actually more powerful than the good Cole. But the gold Cole also has benefits in other ways. His method of gameplay was more precise, right? More tactical. Whereas evil Cole, with his surplus of power, was just bam, 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 bam. He's getting all of the benefit now, and he'll pay the consequences later. He was a blaster, bro. He just started blasting. This feels like that too. So yeah, I think for all of the good that this does, and just how much I was actually just genuinely enraptured in reading the story, I want to see the lore. I want to see canonically where Agrios as a unit would go, right? Does he choose to fight the hunger to the point of actually breaking the curse? Does he not break the curse? This is an interesting story. So yeah, I've got to give this a 10 out of 10, dude. This is amazing. Now, your other one here that I see, this is quite long. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do what I did for, I think it was Tweetiger, right? If I remember correctly. I'm going to come back to these in the next episode, Hedgehog. I'm going to piecemeal it because just getting a general skim, it looks like you more or less kept it in line with the limits like you were referring to before. But I do want to get some other people in this video because based on how much I'm reading here, this video might just all be to you, and I do want to get some other variety in there. So I'm going to come back to you. But freaking incredible so far. Agrios is goated as a deck. I want this in my Vanguard game right now. Okay. Drink break. Yeah. Drink check. Check. And are we still recording? Check. All right. Let's go ahead and get this sucker going. So Jamie Castellana. Oh yeah, I've actually I know this guy. I think he's actually like a sub that like posts here and there. So it's cool to see him here. Maybe it's a little late. Brother. It's not late at all. There are way more people who's had posts since you, dude. Maybe it's a little late, but if you ever make it down here, I want to post a project I worked on a couple years ago. The idea was to bring back reverse into G/premium by, misspelled by providing an incentive to use the old reverse bosses. Okay. I do have some for all 13, but I only dropped the first 5 to give less a headache. Hope you enjoy. Bring back how? Retrains, support about them. Let's read. BTO1001. This came out in the Descent of King of Knights. Whoa, he actually has like the kanji for it, or katakana or whatever. I'm not quite sure what you would call this. Silver Thorn Dragon Monarch Empress Lugier Reverse. That's a 7-word name. Holy crap. But it works. It's a cool name. Grade 4 G. Oh, the reverses as G. You know, I'm actually a little surprised we never saw that, right? That's a fascinating direction. The idea that, yes, the reverse aspects of units in a different reality, they did prevail as the dominant aspect, right? The units that were brainwashed into becoming reverses actually kept going that, and in a despondent future, they amassed their power under the reverse. So we'll start with Lugier here. Grade 4 G unit, Pale Moon Elf, all that good stuff. Okay. Act on the Vanguard circle, counterblast 1 and lock one of your rear guards, right? Self-locking being the tried and true gimmick of the reverses. If your hard card has Lucier or reverse in its card name, you may pay the cost. If you do, put up to 3 of your rear guards into the soul. For each card put in the soul, your opponent chooses one of their rear guards and puts it into their soul. Then call up to the same number of cards from your hand to your open rear circle. Huh, that's an interesting final stipulation of calling more from the hand rather than the soul. I'm not really quite sure why it does that, instead of, say, just calling out other cards from the soul as a cycle in and out in typical Pale Moon fashion. But having said that, I do dig that this works with Lucier or reverse, meaning that you could use this in like most Pale Moon strategies, right? That involve Lucier. And at the same time, I do wonder if this then means that you can, you know how reverses are actually able to be used in a Link Joker Glendios deck? I wonder if there would be a theoretical, he didn't mention it, but if there would be a rule rewrite where a Link Joker Glendios deck can actually use reverse stride units as well. And that would be quite cool, because that means, I mean, ironically, Omega Glendios can't use this, but what can use this is Infinity Cradle, if I think that's the name of it, right? It's a reverse unit that's also got the Glendios-like condition to it. You could stride this over that in that case if it was allowed by the rules of Vanguard to play these reverse G units. So that's an interesting food for thought. Would that actually be something that they do? And if they do, then go figure. Otherwise, if you are actually limiting this to just the clans that they're native to, technically this reverse wouldn't even matter then, because even Lucier reverse is Lucier, so there wouldn't be a distinction there. But still, this effect's really cool. It reminds me of Dragon Masquerade Hari, which what you do is you would like suck up 2 cards with your soul, and then you call 3, and then if you have full field, you force the opponent to suck up 2. In a similar way, you're also doing the shenanigan of sucking up your field, refilling it, and you're making them suck up their rear cards. But they're losing more cards in the process, and at the same time, you also don't have to fill your field afterwards to get the removal. So this is a superior effect that way. Auto Vanguard Circle Generation Break 2. Nice. Counterblast 1. Another Counterblast. Okay. Bind all cards from one of your locked circles face down. That's cool. So you it's like Vanish Delete, but for the self-lock reverse gimmick. Oh wow. It's a Vanish lock. When your Vanguard attacks, which this is your Vanguard, so it's when this unit attacks. If you have a hard card with Lucier reverse in its card name, you may pay the cost. If you do, put all of your rest rear cards of your soul and call the same number of cards with different names for your soul to rear circle. That's real. Okay. This is really strong, right? Not only are you able to just hard reset your cards, your Silver Thorns can use combo abilities when they're called from the soul. Something like, if you're using the G standard of this, especially, this is quite wild, because then something like the Lion, I forget the name of it, it's like Uproar, Upheaval, Lion, something like that. It gets 3k power for every unit you call from the soul, so it'd be getting a huge, massive power up from this. This isn't restricted except by different names, which means you can't get multiple of those. You could also get things like Zelmas going, and Zelmas can do suck in, suck out kind of loop combos with it. That's another powerful thing. This is forcing you to neg 1 initially for it, and then you're breaking even, but it's resetting your multi-attacks, which it's like the pinnacle of Pale Moon attack pattern to go field in, field out, refreshed. And the bind isn't even that big of a deal. Like, sure, you're negging 1 technically for it, but you could just choose the back row center, right? And the back row center, because you have to get rid of it when the Vanguard attacks, it's not like you're going to be able to use a booster for your Vanguard anyway, because you would have to get rid of it. So it's perfect. It works out perfectly just to get 2 rearguard columns fresh and ready to go. This is very powerful though, but I can understand why you would give something like this, because I think in premium, it's a pretty cool skill. And then on top of that, if you're doing it for the sake of your G, right, we're going to look at end of G, which is GZ, right? Or I guess at this point, I would just call it GZ plus. In a theoretical GZ plus type scenario, this is perfectly balanced for that. Strong removal, strong multi-attack, and there we go. So yeah, so far so good. I like the concept of it. It's very powerful though, like holy crap. But nothing here is offensive, especially because both of these skills are using Counterblast, which is a very precious resource for you. So you will have to devote to your Vanguard in terms of your Counterblast economy. Vengeance, Jewel Knight, Cold Heart, Ashley Reverse. We are just committed to these 7-word names, it looks like. But still, a very epic name. Okay. Wait. Hold on a second. Oh, okay. I didn't know it. So this one's just it's BTO1, but this one is reverse BTO1. It's the dawn of a new era, a darker era, an era in which Link Joker had conquered the worlds and the reverses roamed the land. That's actually kind of cool, not gonna lie. The harrowing, ruined future. Active the Vanguard Circle, Counterblast 1, and lock one of your rear guards with Jewel Knight in its card name. Okay, if your heart card has Ashley Reverse in its card. Okay, so we can already see that there's going to be something very similar about this. You may pay the cost. If you do search your deck for up to 2 cards with Jewel Knights in their card name, call them to rear circle, then retire up to 2 units on your opponent's rear circle, and the called unit gets 5,000 power for each rear guard Jewel Knights in the card name. Okay. So I'm gonna look at this in the instance of end of G. I think in end of G, this is a little bit too powerful. Like, don't get me wrong. This is definitely a perfect homage to the way that the Ashley Reverse unit originally worked, where you would call one of your cards and then retire one of them. This doing 2 and 2 is also good. What I don't like about it is that the power gain, each of the units are going to get power for all of your rear cards with Jewel Knights in their card name, which means they're both going to get plus 20,000 power. I think even by GZ standards, that's quite a lot to do for such an easy condition. So I would tone it down to just say 5,000 power, and then you're good to go. But aside from that, very perfect skill, and it perfectly harkens back to the original. Auto on the Vanguard Circle Generation Break 2. Okay, Counterblast 1, bind all cards from one of your locked circles face down. So this seems to be a condition that they're all going to share, just as this is going to be a condition that they all share. All right, you just counterblast, do something with your locked archetype thing, and then if you have a hard card that is based on your original unit. Okay, when your Vanguard attacks, if you have 4 or more Jewel Knight rear guards, you may pay the cost. This is cool because original Jewel Knights got all their effects if you had a field full of Jewel Knights, so I do like that you're still encouraging the full board playstyle. If you do, this unit gets power plus 5,000 for each of your Jewel Knight rear guards. If you have called units due to the effect of a reverse unit this turn, which is this unit, again, right, like I feel like this effect, didn't have to say a reverse unit, but rather it could say if you have call cards due to the effect of this card, this unit gains critical +1. Your opponent cannot call sentinels into under the battle. Ooh, spicy. I like this. This one right here, it feels like so here's something to know, right? In the original Break Right era, right, Ashley's Break Right effect granted 10,000 power like all Break Rights do, but also gave a critical to your Vanguard. Similarly, Salome attacked if you had a formation of Jewel Knights, it also gained power and a critical. This is also like that. It gets power, it gets critical, right? That's like how the old school stuff, like the original Ashley and Salome were like. And then this is referencing how the original reversed worked. This Sentinel bit here, I dig because it adds the last creme de la creme, right? The cherry on top in order to push this thing over to the edge into a very, very strong threatening unit. Because otherwise you are plussing 2 and making them -2, which is a very powerful skill on its own, but then it's also beating you up. This is very powerful, of course, like, don't get me wrong, this is so wicked, but again, I don't think it's so overly powerful that it would be format breaking. I think in particularly in something like premium, this is fine. It might be a little bit too much for G though, again, because in G, for an attack that big, like, I feel like your opponent would have to use like a G Guardian and then some other stuff, which is quite hard for them. But like, let's see, so if this is plus 20,000 power and you're putting it in succession with a 15 base, so that's 35 plus 11, that's 46 versus 11. That means they would need to cough up a minimum of 40k shield for a 1 to pass, which means they'll have to get something more akin to a 45k shield. That's a lot of cards demand for this, not gonna lie. So, the Sentinel admittedly could push it over the edge, but I do like the concept of the Sentinel restrict here because you are putting a lot of emphasis on the Vanguard strike. But then again, Jewel Knights also sort of support each other, and I feel like it might have been it might have been okay to not have this bit here because the Vanguard is still already a threatening swing, and then your other rear guards are still going to be in prime condition to attack with a little bit of power too. So maybe a little bit overtuned, but if I'm questioning if it's overtuned or not, then it's still pretty good card design. Okay, so reverse set. Okay, this is number 3, another double rare. We got a lot of these are all double rares for some reason. I'm surprised there aren't any triple rares. I guess this theoretical set have other triple rares, but I thought triple rares would be like at the top of the set code, right? Because the Lukier is like the top of the set code at number 1, and then this is number 2, this is number 3. I'm surprised they're not triple rares. Carnage Eradicator, Vowing Saber Dragon reverse. Oh no, it's only 6 words for a name. Bro, are you okay? Or can you not go on? I'm sorry if you need to rest, man. That's pathetic. You need to have at least 7, right? We had such a good thing going on. Okay, so anyway, jokes aside, this is a grade 4 G unit reverse for Vowing Saber. So as one would imagine, it's got an axe skill which counterblasts 1 and locks an Eradicator, and its condition is that you need to have a hard card that's Vowing Saber or a Vowing or a reverse, which means it works with the original Vowing Sword Dragon. If you do, retire up to 2 rear guards from your opponent's rear circle, and this unit gets 5,000 power for each one of their open rear circle. The number of rear guards you have is 3 or more than your opponent. This unit gets critical +1. This is very easy to fulfill because you can flood your field and then utilize this axe skill, which you'll probably want to do to some extent anyway, because you need a rear guard on field in order to get your Eradicator locked. Now, interestingly enough, right? In premium, this is even easier because you do have access to Excel markers, but let's look at it in the G context more like, because I think in premium, these are obviously going to be like okay for the most part. In the G aspect of this, this is a little bit more interesting. For one thing, you're using retire instead of binds, which is how original G, it did that more so because it wasn't until Vanquisher that you actually got more of the bind emphasis, and even then, you still retired and then bound stuff, whereas with V series onwards, you just got strictly bind-oriented stuff. Check out my Narukami top 10 video that I released a while back if you want to learn more about the difference between those units, right? It's a shameless self-plug, I know. So this one, I think, is actually kind of an interestingly fair condition versus something like this, which is so easy and relatively brain dead, right? This one's more cool because your opponent, if they fled the field, then you actually can't get your critical here because you need to lock a rear guard, which means the maximum number during the G era, the maximum number that you can have for rear guards is 4, which means that if they have 5 units and they're down 2, they're going to be 3 to your 4. So they have effectively denied you. Even if they do, and even then, right, because you have 4 maximum, if they have at least 4 rear guards to your 4 rear guards and you neg them 2, they're still 2 behind you rather than 3, so you can't get the critical. So this critical is quite hard to get, comparatively speaking, which is interesting, but I think I like it because it does emphasize that if you're dominating, then you're going to steamroll them even harder, right? Auto on the Vanguard Circle Generation Break 2. Counterblast 1 and bind up to 2 cards from your locked circles face down. I don't know... Wait a minute! I completely this is why I need to read things closely and not assume. This one is Counterblast when unlock 2 of your rear guards with Eradicator in their card name. So you need to field wipe them in order to have the 3 or more condition. That critical is insanely hard to pull off then. And then this is forcing you to neg 2 to use the skill. All right, when your Vanguard attacks, which is this unit, if you do for each locked card placed in your bind zone, okay, retire 1 of your opponent's rear guards, then draw 1 card for every face down card in your bind zone, which means that even if you retire nothing, you're still going to get a draw 2, which compensates for the pluses, which means this is the only one so far that actually isn't a neg in of itself. Then draw 1 card for every face down in your bind. If 4 or more units were retired by the effect of a reverse unit this turn, this unit gets drive +1. Okay, yeah, that makes a little bit more sense. This is probably the weakest one so far. Not only are you not likely to get a lot like the critical here, which means it's just a big beater. Like, yeah, it gets a drive and it does get some retires, but overall, it's not a very threatening unit, right? I do like the concept of it because the whole point of Vowing Saber Reverse, right, is that it comboed the original Vowing Sword Dragon, which retired on the break ride, and then Vowing Saber could retire more of your units. And in the fight where it was used against Aichi Sendo, the idea was you could use his Limb Break multiple times, and then you'll be able to wipe out all of your opponent's cards. And in that way, you could use this axe skill multiple times. Which, funnily enough, that I think about it, you could use this axe skill multiple times as well, which is another reason why I think this might be a little bit over the edge. You can use this axe skill multiple times and emulate the field wipe aspect, albeit you are getting rid of like some of your cards. And then even if you use this effect, right, and you didn't retire with this, you could you wait, hold on a second. So you need to retire 4 or more, which means the ideal number for them is 3 then, right? Because if you lock 2, that means you'll be at 3. So 3 minus 2 is 1. Oh, but then if you just use it a second time, then he's going to get more power and a critical, and then he's going to get a drive. And but he's not going to get a drive unless. But then again, he can't get a drive because you didn't get enough returns. Yeah, this is really weird. I actually think it's underpowered, but I like it because it's underpowered in the aspect that it's not an easy card to use. It's a situational card. If your opponent has flooded the board, right? The idea with this card is you commit to a really big Vanguard swing and you lock a lot of stuff. You get a really big Vanguard swing with drive and critical, and you wipe out all of their cards, and you also convert some of your units on field and draws. Then again, I suppose that's if you want the critical. If you don't even want the critical, then you could also just do this effect once and then do this effect, which already gets you some retires. If they've committed a full board though, then this will still retire like a card. So yeah, it's just a field wiper with a really big Vanguard swing, but it comes at the cost of your a lot of your rear cards doing anything meaningful for the turn. It's an interesting skill. It is an interesting skill. What's also kind of trippy about this is I wonder if it would have had some like theoretical implications with Duggery by self-binding, but it's like the implications can't even be there. Then again, funnily enough, this part isn't reverse locked. It's just that this part is reverse locked, right? So I guess technically you could do this skill, but actually, then again, you would need to lock with this skill. So yeah, never mind. He's covered his bases. Okay, let me stop ruminating on that. Reverse. Okay, so this is the 4th one. Archaic Beast Deity Ethics Breaker Reverse. I like the Ethics Breaker Reverse. Another 6-worder. Huh? How disappointing. In all seriousness, though, act on the Vanguard Circle, counterblast 1, and choose 2 cards in your hand with Beast Deity in their card name. Discard them. Choose 2 of your rear cards and lock. This is a cost. Okay, I already like the sound of this because if you're playing Novus, bro, especially like Ethics Buster Reverse, the Hell's Infinity combo was all about going die hard and attack and beat down your opponent, and either you win or lose on that turn, baby. Which is freaking epic. Sorry. If your hard card has Ethics Buster or Reverse in its card name, you pay the cost. If you do, until end of turn, your front row units gain auto on the Vanguard Circle once per turn, which that doesn't. Oh, hold on a second. Let me read on. Let me not assume. Because I just saw an auto rearguard circle right there. When this unit attacks a Vanguard, stand all of your front row rear guards, and they get power plus 5,000 and auto rear. When this unit stands due to an effect, this unit gets power plus 5,000. Then at the end of the battle, this unit attacks, and this unit gets strike minus 2. Okay. So, he's interpreting the Hell's Infinity combo, right? You go rear, rear. Van is going to swing. Stand. And then when the rear stand, they're going to get 5,000 power. And then they're going to go boom, boom. This guy's also stood, right? And then he goes again. And this is a once per turn, though. So this isn't going to restand your units again. And that means you're going to get 6 attacks. But you're actually going to be able to get an extra drive with it, which means that overall, you are interpreting this in a very, very good way. I like this because just like with the original, this has a weakness that the original also had. The original required some locks and a lot of like investment, and you would get a bunch of front row attacks, but you didn't get a lot of power gain. So defensives could quite easily deny you because you're really relying on skimpy front row attacks. This is something like that as well. You do get a little bit of a power buff from this, right? But then that's it. Your back rows are probably going to be locked because you need to lock 2 of your rear guards. So you may only have 1 column. And even if you do have 1 column, the booster's only going to go once normally, unless you do have I think it was Riot Horn, right? Wasn't it Riot Horn that's restood it when another unit in the same column like stood up? So you could combo with Riot Horns, which is where you would like get more costs associated with it. So that's cool. Yeah, this is a good interpretation. It's a very threatening attack, though. A 6 attack turn, especially with 2 of them are coming from a stride, and you do have drive check pressure for both of them. Yeah, this is quite the phenomenal effect. I'm like, holy crap. Yeah, I think this would make Beast Deity very legitimate on its own. You don't need to even care what Beast Deity you use, dude. Hell, you don't even have to like lock Beast Deities. You just have to discard Beast Deities. Auto on the Vanguard Circle, Generation Break 2, Counterblast 1, bind up to 2 cards from your locked circles face down. When this unit attacks your opponent's Vanguard, you may pay the cost. If you do, for every lock card bound this turn, stand one of your rear cards get... Okay, now that's pushing it over the edge, because now what you do, right, is your 6 attack turn became 8 attack turn, because on this unit's second swing, you'll be able to pay the cost and stand your rear guards again, and they get another 5,000 power. And 5,000 power is a little bit more meaningful in this context, because let's bear in mind that, especially during the G era, your trigger units were only 5,000 power as well, which means every instance of 5,000 is like what 10,000 would be in the premium context. That's quite... yeah, I don't know if I like that, right? I feel like it might... crap. How would I change this, though? I don't know how I would change this, but I feel like 8 attacks is too much, comparatively speaking, because you have the power gain here and the strides and stuff. Yes, you're not going to have a full field when you're doing it, but that's still a little bit too much. And like this, and also Ashley, I think they both are like walloping the opponent. I will admit that technically you're negging some cards here, because you're losing 2 cards here, and then the discard 2 isn't going to be appropriately refunded by just 1 extra drive in total. But I don't know, dude. That might be a little bit... Is it, though? Maybe I'm a little bit freaked out. You know what? I will say this. Maybe you could stand one of your rear guards, but maybe not the 5,000 power. Maybe leave the 5,000 power alone and just hope you can get some triggers to give some 5,000 power, right? If you can do that, I think that's enough of a compromise to where it's quite strong, but it may not be necessarily overwhelming. You actually still let Beast Deity keep the 1 weakness that it had with the original. That aside, though, in terms of emulating what the original did and elevating it, you get full marks for that, my friend. Sadistic Shaver Celestial Genesis Romulo Reverse. Hey, is it a Genesis unit because it's got Genesis in the name? Okay, anyway. Activate the Vanguard Circle, Counterblast 1. Choose 2 of your rear guards Celestial on their card names and lock them. Okay, so that's quite simple. If your hard card has Romulo or Reverse in its card name, you pay the cost. If you do, all front row units with Celestial in their card names get power plus 10,000 until end of turn. Alright, I do like the power-up. Celestial could use some easy power-ups occasionally and not make everything complicated. And if you have a face-up reverse unit in your damage zone, ooh, incentive to play one of the reverses, like, okay, that's cool. Choose 2 cards from your opponent's damage zone, bind them face down, then select 2 of your opponent's rear guards and place them in your damage zone face down. This is freaking great. I love this. I love this so much because Romulo Reverse also had the effect of swapping your opponent's rear guards with a unit in the damage zone. So essentially you were retiring their units, but by putting them in the damage zone and then healing out one of their cards. The thing is, though, is that your opponent got agency in this choice, and it meant that they could effectively countercharge. This is insane. Because let's say your opponent has like a couple face up damage and a couple face down damage. You'll be able choose 2 of your opponent's face up cards from the damage zone, bind them face down, and then put 2 of their rear guards and put them face down as well. It's kind of funny that it says select, right, instead of choose. Select is like old school Yu-Gi-Oh term. So you not only have removed 2 of their cards, you've also counterblasted them 2, and you got a pretty big power up in the process. This is a really, really strong effect, but I dig it. You know, Ghidorah also had the counterblast tax thing going on as well, and in that way, I think this is another one that's quite interesting, especially because then it will prompt your opponent to play more aggressively and burn their counterblast, or if they only want a certain amount of counterblast that they can burn every turn, like let's say they only really burn 2 maximum, they might limit their damage against you. So far, there's not too much offensive pressure. The power-up is quite nice, though, but not too much offensive pressure. So they could potentially limit damage from you that way that they're just breaking even in their overall counterblast economy. But even if by 1, yeah, that's quite threatening. So, okay, I dig that. Auto on the Vanguard Circle Generation Break 2. You counterblast 1, bind up to 2 cards from your locked circles face down. When this unit attacks your opponent, you may pay the cost. If you do, choose 1 card from your damage zone for the amount of cards placed in the bind zone this turn. This is interesting because I think it also considers the ones that you put from the axe skill here to the opponents. So let's say 4, right? Let's go in the assumption of 4. Then call them to rear circle, then place the top card in your damage zone. And if you have 2 or more face-up reverse units in your damage zone, this unit gets critical +1. Okay, so this is also a very interesting skill. This is a lot of multi-attack potentially, but what I do like about this multi-attack is that it actually can shoot you in the foot if you're not careful with it, which is very conducive of the Celestial playstyle, where if you don't if you don't measure your moves carefully, you're going to hurt yourself more than you're going to help, right? Every dynamic move needs to be carefully planned out. Case in point, you're giving your front row units plus 10,000 power, right? This is a static bonus, not a continuous skill, meaning that when you call over them, they're not going to get that. So you may get, like, it's going to be a multi-attack potentially, but you're calling over cards, and you can only call them over for multi-attacks if you're getting over the 10k bonus ones, which means that you're probably not going to play stand triggers. If you're playing stand triggers in your deck, then you're probably not doing this skill, but this skill seems kind of nice, so you probably don't play stand triggers, so you have to pick one or the other. Now, another thing, this card has saying 2 or more reverse units in the damage zone, right? You could keep a couple reverse units there. You'd have to purposely put them in there, but you can do it. But when you do so, that runs into conflict with your call skill, because if you're calling a bunch of cards from the damage zone, by process of elimination, you'll probably at some point have to call your Romeo reverse, especially if you're not at the full 5 damage. So you'll screw yourself out of this critical, meaning that unless, of course, you get lucky and the cards that you put from the top of the deck gets you another Romeo reverse, you're not going to get that critical, which means it's just a pretty okay multi-attack skill. Because it's a pretty okay multi-attack skill, I do appreciate it. I do think it's fine. And overall, because you're also negging 2 to do this in the first place, and then you're calling over a couple cards in the front row, yeah, this is perfectly serviceable. I think this really addresses the intricacies of the Celestial game plan, and this is taking Ramiel's tried and true removal skill up to the next level and eliminating the very annoying weakness of it, and making it instead a genuinely threatening skill that people will finally respect. So yeah, 10 out of 10 unit, this one. Oh, and that was it. Yeah, I really like these. Now, there are a couple, right? Particularly, I think the Ethics Breaker and your Cold Heart Ashleys could use some balancing stuff here, potentially. But, you know, even then, they're still in the realm of fair. But what I love about these, right? Card balancing aside, right? Because some are over, like Jewel Knights. Some are under, like freaking Eradicators. They all are super in touch with the reverse units of old. Every one of these, I referenced the old playstyle. Well, I guess with the exception of Luke here, but pretty much all of these, I referenced the old playstyle. They immediately came to my mind because that's how vividly you were able to reenact them and take them to the next level. So I've got to give a lot of kudos for this, man. Like, these are like 9.75 or something like that, maybe even another 10. Like, probably not a 10 because there is some balancing errors that are like more than the average, but just on a couple of them. But even then, they're so minor they may not be balancing errors. And also, you're trying to do this for G/premium, so I think by the nature of you trying to be, you're trying to like straddle the fence there. If it's between G or premium, you know, that actually dramatically affects how some of these things are, right? But I mean, you know, a balanced card does not a great custom card make inherently. And in terms of everything else going on here, this is freaking phenomenal, dude. I want these things. These would be so cool to play, whether it be in G format or premium. I'd play these in both, dude, especially G. I mean, G was like kind of the pinnacle of freaking Vanguard's history, in my opinion, right now. So, you know, of course I'm gonna have some bias for it, but, you know, it's well substantiated bias, might I say to your viewer. So, yeah, really, 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 really well done here. Like, you know, claps to you, dude. I would love to see more of these reverses next time around, dude. Especially, it would be interesting to see the theoretical reverses that didn't come from the original, right? But were reverses that were made in the V reboot. Like, for instance, the Cecilia reverse or the Raging Fall Dragon reverse. Those would be interesting to see. Spectral Dupe Dragon reverse. It'd be cool to see a stride of that. Now, of course, those are probably just by the very essence of the time frame of when those cards were revealed. You would probably have to make those premium exclusive because the only versions that you can interact with would be the V series versions, which doesn't exist in G, thankfully. So yeah, that'd be a little bit of a hiccup, but still, you know, if I've inspired you to do that by me saying it, then, you know, more power to you. I would love to see it. Okay, Fated 1 of 0. How close are we to the end zone here? Ooh, okay, we're getting kind of close. Let me see how many cards he has, and if he's got a lot, then I'll keep it. I'll top it off here for now. Okay. Oh, what the heck? Oh, here we go. Okay. Oh, I was about to feel so bad. Oh, we've got some Chaos Breaker. Okay, let me read if he's got like any stuff. Fated 1 of 0. I've seen this guy around before. What's up, man? How are you doing? Hi, gods, man. This is my creation. Please don't hate for the Link Joker. No worries. I'm not a Link Joker hater. Although Noir, if you guys seen on my channel before, he's a really big Link Joker player. He plays all sorts of Link Joker decks. Ironically, except for Glendios, which is the only Link Joker deck I play. So it's kind of an inverse relationship there. Although he's mainly a Messiah player, right? So trust me. I've dealt with Link Joker enough to know how to deal with them, but it's not my favorite clan, but I don't hate them. Massive update. I found a custom card maker and made a whole deck for Chaos Breaker for an encounter deck. Last edit made it into a dock. Yep, okay, I just saw that. So let's go ahead and get into that. There's not a lot of cards here, so I can actually fit this in before the end. So congratulations, Zero. You're going to be the last man. Let's see here. So 1, 2, 3, and then some more rearguard support. Okay, cool. Can I actually interact with this in any way? No. Okay. So you're going to see little squinting gods, man, perhaps, unless I can. What if I did this? Can I? Yeah. Okay. So this is how we're gonna have to do it. Sorry, guys. But so be it. To probably display the sheet, considering, sorry, but you know, I have to do this. I guess I have to sell the spreadsheet as well. Star Vader Plank Draco Kid. If I remember correctly, a plank was supposed to be, it was something in physics that was based on this, but I forgot what it was now. Dang, I was about to sound really smart and cool, but now here I am falling on my face. Chaos will dominate all. It's like a freaking, edgelord in D&D or something, right? You know, he's playing his character. He's like trying to be Shadow the Hedgehog or some crap. Where Levi from Attack on Titan is super cool, and it's like chaos will reign. You know, when they start sounding goofy, despite them seeming like they're trying to be super cool. Once units roll upon you in second, you may draw a card. Okay, cool, normal stuff. So let's get on to the meat and potatoes, namely not a starter. Star Vader, Heliopose Dragon. You know, honestly, these are Star Vaders that I don't remember. So this is a real Link Joker lover. If he's referring to some old crap like this. And this unit is rode upon. Call this unit to a rear from Soul, then Soul Charge 2. Okay, so in other words, it's a +1 and a Soul Charge 1. Cool. All right. And it can only call this card from Soul and not anything from your Soul, so that's also fair because it means that you can't high roll into something greater, right? There's no one people hate more than a Link Joker player who high rolls. LOL. Okay. If this unit boosts a unit while you control a Chaos Breaker Vanguard, okay, this unit gets 5,000 power. If this unit boosts a unit with Chaos Breaker in its card name, it gets 2,000 power. Okay, so Chaos Breaker is kind of getting the 15k booster treatment here. It gets 2,000 power. If a unit is locked, cost Soul Blast 1, add 1 normal unit from the drop with a different card name from your Vanguards, and doesn't have Sentinel from drop to hand. Okay, so a Soul Blast to add back anything that is not a trigger, and not a Sentinel, and not a Persona Ride. He hit the 3 things that could abuse this, right? Like, let's learn from Fated 1 of 0 right now, right? Because he's done the thing I've been suggesting for a few of these drop zone to hand cards, which is limit the problem aspects and you're good. Normal unit without Sentinel, without Persona, boom. There is nothing that you can do that would abuse it. You can't even add back orders because it's normal units. So there is almost no way to truly abuse this effect. And I also love that since it's a booster that's going to be for your Chaos Breaker, you only need to run one of this guy, right? And if you do run multiples of it, because maybe you're in a theoretical control matchup, that's perfectly fine. You take your turn, you have this dude get sniped for some reason, and then you call another Heliopose Dragon. What Heliopose Dragon does is it's Soul Blast to add back a different copy of Heliopose, because it doesn't have to be a different name from itself, it's just a different name from your Vanguard. Adding a Heliopose off a Heliopose is not a problem, because it's not normally a problem unit. You can only use this Soul Blast effect if you're boosting specifically Chaos Breaker, and if there's a locked card. So there's a lot of conditions, and there's also not a lot that you can add back, but everything that you can add back is basically just a piece that you can use for your next turn. This is good recursion. And by tapping into Soul Blast, you're also using a meaningful resource, because for those of you guys who don't know, Chaos Breaker had a skill here, and I think he's going to have a Soul Blast. Yeah, he has some Soul Blast skill down there, right? Chaos Breaker, originally, when your opponent's unit unlocked, you were able to Soul Blast in order to draw a card and get rid of it, right? So Soul is a very touchy resource for Link Joker. Funnily enough, Messiah is the same way. So I do like that it's touching on a meaningful resource. Like, this is a perfect card. There is so much versatility while also being, it's just good enough that it's relevant without being abusable in any bad way. It's perfect. Star Vader Mobius Breath Dragon. Mobius Breath. Mobius Breath was it was one of the first Star Vaders ever shown, right? As a matter of fact, in the first fight Link Joker ever had in the anime, Mobius Breath was rode as the Grade 2, and it had a Vanguard specific skill, right? Where if it hit, you're able to lock one of your opponent's rear guards, right? Which Reverse Takuto did against Kai. So I wonder if he's going to interpret that in a better way, because I always wanted to see Mobius Breath Dragon be better, because I thought the on hit on Vanguard only is the thing that kept it from being a viable card, because that was way too specific. Auto on the Vanguard rearguard circle. If this unit's attack hits, lock a unit your opponent controls. Okay. So yeah, again, there we go. So if it hits, it gets a lock for free. Honestly, I feel like with this one, it would be nice if it was only back row, because I think free locking a front row is a little bit too easy, especially for standard right now, because there isn't a crest that's going, there is no crest, right? Which is going to make your opponent unlock and bind their locked cards, so they're going to be stuck with that. So I think it would be better if it was just back row. If this unit is rode upon, call this unit to rear circle from Soul, cost counterblast 1, add 1 unit from your deck with Link Joker as its only clan. No. This one's a problem, because you can add back Cosmo Breath, which is a PG. You can add a you can add a Persona Ride off of this. That's way too easy for a counterblast, right? I mean, heck, even Bar, right? Which was he counterblasted 1, and it allowed you to add a Sentinel, right, as a ride line, and be like, well, why hate on Bar then? Well, that's because that's basically all Bar did. This card is doing that in addition of having a very viable Vanguard and Rearguard skill to lock any unit for free. So yeah, I don't like that. I would honestly say that it would have been better if, when this unit's rode upon, call this unit to Soul from to rear circle from Soul, and then just leave it at that. Don't add the counterblast skill. Just do this skill and have this lock it back for rear, and you've got a perfect moderately good, nice +1 that again draws from your soul, right? So it's not like it's totally free. It draws from your soul, and the lock isn't busted, but we can still have you keep the lock and accelerate your conditions. That's what I would say for Mobius Breath. So not quite as good as what you did with Heliopose. Now Star Vader, Chaos Breaker Dragon, the big kahuna. That sweet despair is the reason I lock. Awesome, amazing. If you've ever watched G, you guys know how cool Chaos Breaker is. Auto, if the unit is rode upon, so it's got a skill when it's rode upon, which is a fascinating skill. I get more why this card is trying to add a persona now, but if that's the case, then I feel like instead of calling it to a rear circle, then what you would do is you would have it counterblast to add a copy of Chaos Breaker specifically from deck to hand and not call it from soul. That way, then if you wanted to get Mobius Breath's rear guard centric lock, then you would have to run more Mobius Breaths in the main deck and draw into them. Anyway, this unit is rode upon if you have 3 or more damage, which is weird because that's not limit break. That would be 4 or more damage. Costs Counterblast 2 and Soul Blast 1. You can see... This is a weird way of putting it. I've never seen that. You can see and choose a card from your opponent's hand or drop for them to call to rear circle. Then you can lock 1 unit your opponent controls. Also, your Vanguard gets power plus 10,000 and 10 to turn. Okay. There's some cool stuff here and there's some stuff I don't like about this. But yeah, you know what? There's a lot going on here, so let me address this right now individually. If you were trying to, the damage restriction feels a little bit arbitrary, right? If you want to do the damage restriction, leaving it to 4 or more would have been better because it's referencing limit break, right? I feel like that would have been better. Although, of course, if I remember correctly, Chaos Breaker's limit break was not the lock, but actually the condition of Soul Blasting to retire and drop. I could be wrong about that. Anyway. Counterblasting 2 and Soul Blasting 1 is a really, really big skill, and you're only doing it with rode upon, right? But take out the damage thing. Now, the Vanguard getting 10,000 power till end of turn, right? That's also fine. I don't mind that at all. Your opponent choosing a card from hand or drop to call to rear, and then you lock. This was a little bit weird because you're taking hand information from your opponent. You don't really see that. There was an anime exclusive card Misaki used way back in the original anime. I think its name was like Hermes or something. I forget specifically what its name was, but it was something like that, right? It had a skill to see your opponent's hand, and that was wildly overtuned. So I think this also, I don't think you should be able to see your opponent's hand. So here's what I would say. In this unit's rode upon, Counterblast 1, Soul Blast 1. Choose a card from your opponent's drop or at random from your opponent's hand. Your opponent calls that chosen card to the rearguard circle. You choose a card. Your opponent chooses that card and calls it to a rearguard circle as locked, right? And then this unit gets 10, and then the Vanguard gets 10,000 power. That might be how you do it. Is he trying? You know what? Is he trying to interpret Infinite Zero Dragons of skill because of the whole break ride thing? Maybe that's what he's trying to interpret. This is a weird effect. I'm not quite sure how to balance it yet. Let me read the other skills and then maybe I can get more of an inkling. Act in the Vanguard circle once per turn. Counterblast 1 and discard a card. Lock a unit your opponent controls, and units you controlled Link Joker's only clan get 10,000 power to end a turn. If you couldn't lock or you lock 2 or more units this turn, this unit gets drive plus 1. This is not an okay effect. The issue with this effect is it's this in combination with the rode upon skill. It's making locking. I think locking's a little bit too easy here. I guess technically you can only lock 1, but the problem is then your opponent will only have 1 front or rear guard and then their Vanguard to use. Then on the next turn, when you ride upon, right, which based on how things are going, that's really easy to do. When you ride over it, you'll be able to lock both of your opponent's rear guards, meaning that they can only have their Vanguard to attack with, and then he's going to get plus 20,000 power. He'll be able to get the drive, which means that the discard doesn't mean anything anymore. And that's a little bit that's a little bit problematic, but I don't think it's hopeless. I think this skill right here, the fact that it's a once per turn, the fact that it gives power, right? It's a neg, but it pays you back if you couldn't lock or if you lock 2 or more. Here's the thing. I would say this effect has potential, but what makes this weird is this Rotopon skill, and I don't like the Rotopon skill. I get you're probably trying to interpret Infinite Zero Dragon in a way, but you don't need to do that. I think it's superfluous. It probably would have it probably would have been bad to do that. Now, of course, one thing you can do, because Counterblast and Discard is what the original Chaos Breaker did, and I think it was perfectly fine to get that neg in order to get a lock of your choice. And locking your opponent's rear guard is very, very devastating as it is. Maybe the drive isn't if you lock 2 or more units, or if you couldn't lock, but rather if you couldn't lock, or if you're at 4 or more damage, right? That's where your limit break condition comes into play. Final skill. Auto on the Vanguard Circle costs Soul Blast 1. During your opponent's end phase, when an opponent's lock card is unlocked, you can play the cost to retire a unit, draw a card. Okay, so this is just like the original, and this is perfectly fine. I've got no issues about this effect whatsoever. It was just like the old one, right? You were able to, like, get rid of their crap and draw, which is kind of, I kind of like, and one thing I liked about that effect from Chaos Breakers, yeah, that means that you could substantiate yourself with more hand, but then you freed up the opponent's rear guard, which means they have another chance at being able to free up their cards. So here's what I would say. Keep this effect. Maybe make this effect some sort of continuous skill to grant power for every lock in under your opponent's control, right? And then this skill is that you lock a card, right? And this unit gets 10,000 power, but if you couldn't lock, or if you have 4 or more damage in the damage zone, this unit gets drive +1. Maybe you could also do a drive and critical +1, right? That way it's a pretty beefy attacker with critical and gets an extra drive, so that it's a threatening Vanguard swing. And then you get some basic unlock and retire stuff. So you're sort of playing the control game, right? And in a lot of control decks, your Vanguard is in pairing with your control abilities. You also have a Vanguard that can actually do some damage, right? Not too much, and you also don't get multi-attack or stuff like that in most control decks. Things like Buff Sagura, for instance, right? But the Vanguard is still quite beefy because you're trying to win the attrition game against your opponents, where you're demanding a lot of resources for them to stave off your admittedly kind of threatening Vanguard. So that's how I would change this. Make this a minor buff up continuous skill. Make this, keep this effect, but instead of lock 2 or more units, have it be 4 or more damage, and just keep this skill. And that's how it would change Chaos Breaker. Alright, moving on, some rear guards. He also just put rear guards here, nice. Starvader Worldline Dragon, using the original Worldline Dragon art, very cool. Auto on the Guardian Circle, if your opponent has a lock card, this unit gets power +5,000, shield +5,000. Nice effect. Technically this is a continuous skill though, rather than auto, because it doesn't have like a triggering effect like when placed on Guardian Circle. It's just, well, it exists on the Guardian Circle. After the rear guard, cost rest this unit, 1 unit you control gets 5,000 power and countercharge 1. Nah, instead it should retire itself for that. Counterblast is pretty important, especially in your deck, so I feel like resting itself is not good enough as far as the cost is concerned, especially because you're giving 5,000 power. So let's say you put this right behind right behind a rear guard grade 3 or something. A rear guard grade 3 only needs 5,000 power from the Worldline Dragon's 8,000 power. The other 3k to make up 8k superfluous on your numbers, because 21 is not better than 18 versus a grade 3 Vanguard, right? So the 5,000 is all you need from it. So you just put it to the unit in front, and then you countercharge 1 for free. Yeah, no, retire it instead. Take the hard neg 1, right? Especially because you're going to be drawing cards off of Chaos Breaker anyway, so you're fine, dude. Starvader Strange Dragon. Ooh, this guy is a blast from the past for G. This one was like all the way back in Break Ride, but this one's like a G card. So he's taking bits and pieces from everywhere. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if something like Heliotrope was like a Legion unit or something. I'm not sure. Legion had a lot of Link Joker cards. Anyway, Starvader Strange Dragon has a skill, auto on the rear. Once per turn, if this unit is placed on rear, your opponent can choose to lock 1 unit they control. If no cards were locked, this unit gets 5,000 power until end of turn. Yeah, that's a good card. Just gets 5,000 automatically. Your opponent probably won't ever use this condition, so you just get plus 5,000. That's easy enough, right? The fact that they can rather than they must, and if they didn't, then you get 5,000. That's way better. Continuous on the rear. If you control Vanguard or Chaos Breaker's card name, then this unit gets boost. Yeah, that's fine. That works. It's a really the fact that it can be a 15k booster is also relevant for your for your rear guards, especially your grade 3 rear guards, which we're actually about to get to with the Twilight. Oh, he shows Twilight Baron. That's kind of cool. Ooh, what do we got going on here? Huh. Gotcha. Okay, sorry. Yeah, I definitely gonna have to go after this anyway, so let's go ahead and read this very quickly. Twilight Baron. Continuous in the rear circle. If there is a lock card, this unit gets 5,000 power continuously. Yeah, you see something like this, right? Like, it's a minor power buff as long as there's the lock card. It's not offensive, but it does help you ramp based on your gimmick. That's a good design. On the rear circle once per turn. If this unit attacked and it doesn't hit, or your persona rod. So this is a little bit of a weird wording thing again. It would say at the end of the battle, this unit attacked. If the attack didn't hit, or if you persona rod this turn, cost lock one of your rear guards, stand this unit and gets power plus 5,000. I don't like that skill because there's no consequence to it. The thing is that if you go the other rear and then you swing at this guy, or heck, what's funny is that, and I see the combo here, right? You use Worldline Dragon. Worldline Dragon rests itself to countercharge and give plus 5,000 power. The 5,000 goes to Twilight Baron. That plus the 5,000 continuously for Twilight Baron is 23. Now Twilight Baron goes for 23. And if, let's say, it didn't hit or you persona rode, right? In which case it'd be a 33 attacker. You lock the rested Worldline Dragon, and then you get another 5,000 power and an attack, which is a really easy multi-attack in a control deck, which should not happen because you shouldn't be relying on multi-attack beatdowns in Link Joker. You should be relying on the powerful lock gimmick to win the attrition game. This is effectively free, especially because then at the end of the turn, your Worldline Dragon will unlock with no consequences to it, and yeah, it'll just be able to use this effect again for free, right? It reminds me of the play pattern with V-Series Battle Sister, right? Where I think it was Coco or something, right? She would rest herself, and then Fromage Reverse would just lock it afterwards. It was a totally free interaction. So yeah, I don't like the skill. I feel like it shouldn't have been a multi-attacker, right? I do kind of like the whole if it doesn't hit thing, because it having like, I think I kind of like hit pressure with Twilight Baron, just as there's hit pressure with Mobius, because the idea is that they shouldn't let Chaos Breaker hit, especially if you do, as I suggest, to do the whole critical drive power thing, right? Then you're also having pressure on the rear guard, and you're constantly forcing your opponent to make tough choices. The best versions of Link Joker are the versions of Link Joker where the opponent has choices. It's not that you're making it easy, right? I'm not saying to take Link Joker to baby mode, because a lot of people are really scared of locks, and they shouldn't be scared of locks, but locks can easily get out of hand, right? As we saw with GZ Link Joker, when you could lock most of your opponent's units and keep them locked every single turn, lock was taken out of bounds. Your opponent legitimately couldn't really play the game at all. And if you just kept getting benefits and you kept making it easy to get locks over and over again, that wasn't fun at all. It was too rampant a card design. Instead, if locks were more precious, so you as the player have to decide what's the crucial piece to lock, and the opponent has to decide what they're willing to give up and what they're willing to let hit, there is a lot of thinking and back and forth from you and your opponent trying to outplay each other and win the grind game. That to me is the peak of the Link Joker playstyle and what's most fulfilling for the clan, right? While also, if you did it like that, it would help restore Link Joker's good name, because people can then realize that if Link Joker can be played around, right? If you're skilled enough, you can play around Link Joker. It'll make the fights engaging and not have people rage quit on you, right? So there's just, for every reason ever, I feel like we shouldn't have easy beatdown effects like this, right? It doesn't belong in the clan at all. I'm not sure what you would do with this effect instead, right? I mean, you could probably have Twilight Baron. I mean, I do think the continuous effect is perfect. It's just fine, right? But if you had to give it a second effect, I mean, heck, you could have it be a thing like when it attacks, right? You could have it like gain an extra 10,000 power, but then mandatorily it goes into soul afterwards. So it'll be a 28k beater, 30 AM persona, right? It'll be a really big beater, but then you have the neg one to it. But because it's to the soul, you can then convert it out as a soul blast for a draw and a retire with Chaos Breaker skill, much like how Messiah play patterns go. That would probably be the best like suggestion I could give for you right now, but you could take the secondary skill in any number of ways to help service the clan. But that's the way that I think would give you the very basic beatdown and also, you know, feel your gimmick a little bit, but not in a busted way at all. So yeah, there's some good stuff here and some bad stuff here. I'm going to say that between some of the wording errors, some of the overblown effects, and also just some of the very weird and busted interactions, and also I think like some of these effects do understand what's good for Link Joker, and I think Heliopose is definitely your peak card design here. This card is perfect. Like, honestly, kind of a stroke of genius compared to some of these other ones, right? I'm going to give this about a 6.5 out of 10. It's a start. And I think there is a lot of ways that you could build upon these. But with the exceptions of Strange Dragon Heliopause, and also Plank by default, because it's a freaking starter, what could I say about this? Chaos Breaker, Mobius Breath, World Line, and Twilight Baron all do need some work. They need to be rebalanced with a clear design and going back to basics on how Link Joker operated in the beginning, right? Take that suggestion to heart, and I think you have a really cool encounter set in the future. All right, that's going to do it for this episode of Custom Card Review. Only got through like 3 people today, and one of them I actually had to skip out on half for in order to do it, but still, I think these are some really fun archetypes. Agrios is definitely the highlight here, and the reverses had some really, really fun callbacks, and even the Link Joker cards here. I did like talking about Link Joker. This does engender a really good discussion, which is, what if we didn't have Messiah Link Jokers in Standard? Could Standard handle locks, and how should locks be taken? And I think I added my 2 cents into the matter, where limiting the number of cards that you can lock, and also probably lean more on some back row locks, and focus more on locking as a potential ramp and resource engine to stall the opponent while also adding to your own for an attrition game. I feel like that's how you should take Chaos Breaker, right? You know, it emulates as well Chaos Breaker's very sadistic nature as a unit, where it toys with the opponent and kills them slowly. You know, where it gives them the illusion of hope, but slowly but surely they fall just short of the finish line and they despair for it, right? Super edgy, I know, but that's kind of how Chaos Breaker played, and his character emulated that in G. Again, if you want an excuse to watch G, well, there you go. He's a great character in it. So yeah, that's what I would say as a suggestion here. Even these were pretty cool to talk about. So overall, another really good episode, I guess, as is the standard in these days, which I'm happy to say about. Anyway, if you guys did like this episode, then go ahead and check out the others in the season. If you've already caught up with them, catch up the other seasons if you like. Or if you've had enough custom cards for now, then I've got loads of other Vanguard content to get through. We've got fight nights, discussions, anime reactions, the whole shebang, so check those out. And if you like what you see, consider leaving a subscribe and turn on the notification bell next I upload a video. And with that said, take care, God bless.